Hello and welcome to D20 Woodworking. And for today's video, we're going over expensive cards in Marvel Champions and are they worth it? Now, expensive cards, I don't mean the actual game itself because we sink way too much money into this game and accessories and all that fun stuff. But I mean actual card cost, right? It's one of those things that when we're deck building, we look at the different costs of cards and we kind of have to weigh the pros and the cons. I thought it'd be fun to look at expensive cards, and my definition of expensive cards that I'm using is 4 cost or higher, right? And it's 4 cost or higher. So this would be a fun thing to look at what's out there right now and see if it's worth it. Now, a couple things we have to note with this video before we really get started. One, the biggest thing, this is obviously just my subjective opinion. So I'm just going off of what I think. There's maybe situations that I haven't thought about where a card may make sense, or maybe it doesn't make sense the way I think it does. Feel free to comment. Make sure you scroll down, comment. Let me know your thoughts about it, and how your views differ with this. And also, we're just doing the basic cards. I was thinking about doing all of them, but that'd be a really long video. If you all really like this video, we can do the other aspects as well. But I just kind of wanted to do the basic ones since they can be really played in any hand. So lastly, last big thing, if you haven't yet, make sure to go over to twitch.tv/D20 Woodworking, where I stream Sunday and Tuesday nights and some Thursdays, so that you can see more Marvel Champions and other board games gameplay over there. All right, so let's dive into this and let's jump into the first card. All right, so the first one I want to talk about is, and this is all in alphabetical order, is Agent 13, right? So Agent 13 is a 4-cost ally. She has a 2 threat ability or 2 thwart ability, 1 attack, 4 health. And her response is, after Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, choose a shield support, ready that support. So a lot of people are using this card as a way to build out their shield decks, right? That kind of became a thing with Miles Morales, and half of his deck was shield cards, and people kind of started coming up with interesting decks for shield. Now, with this, right, Agent 13, when Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, choose a shield support and ready to support. So we take a quick look at some of the supports. Here they all are, right? These on the screen, there's a bunch of them, I'm not gonna name them all, are the supports that are out there right now. But the two I want to mention is first Sky Destroyer, right? This is one that a lot of people thought of originally with this card, because after you play a shield card, exhaust Sky Destroyer, deal 2 damage. So it's nice that when you play this, you can use this card right away, deal 2 damage, use Agent 13 to ready it up, and then when you use play a different shield card, right, you can use it again, which I think is pretty good. But to me, the biggest worth for this is if you use Helicarrier. Let's see if I can find one with the image. If you use it with Helicarrier, right? So Helicarrier is one of our core cards. I still think it's a really good card. 3-cost support. You exhaust Helicarrier, choose a player, reduce the resource cost of the next card that player plays this phase by 1. So now essentially you can use Helicarrier twice in 1 round, right? You use Helicarrier to play for something. Agent 13 will respond. You choose a shield support, ready that support. Shield support, you can ready it up. So you can use Helicarrier twice around, really helping to pay it off pretty fast. Personally, if you're running a more basic centric deck where you have the Power in All of Us, which is the is the wild resource card that doubles if you use it for basic cards, right? If you're using that wild resource that doubles for basic resources, Agent 13 makes a lot of sense in a deck, in my opinion, especially if you're running a basic heavy. In general, I could see the argument for Agent 13 because Helicarrier is used in a lot of decks, it seems. It seemed like it was used a lot in the beginning, then it kind of died out, and now I'm seeing it more and more again because it's a good card. It's a really good card, and I think Agent 13 can make a lot of sense if you're using Helicarrier a lot and you can afford the expensive cards, right? So Agent 13, my opinion is I think she justifies the 4 cost, right? Especially if it's paired with, or if she's paired with Helicarrier, I think she really justifies it because now Helicarrier gets a lot of use out of it. And you can use it essentially 3 times, and then as a blocker, or use it as a 4-time and ready it up, right? So I'm a big fan of Agent 13. I think that cost is worth it. And now it doesn't make sense for every deck, obviously, but if you can afford high cost cards, I definitely think it makes sense. All right, so next one we got to talk about is Avengers Mansion, the 4-cost support, max 1 per player. It's an action. Exhaust this card. Exhaust Avengers Mansion. Choose a player. That player draws 1 card. Now, draw a card. Card draw is king, right, in this game. So this card, in my opinion, is always worth it. Now, it's funny because when you talk about any of this stuff, a lot of it gets broken down the lines of, well, the people that need it the most is like Thor or Hulk or Drax, people with 4 hand size. but it's harder for them to put out this card, right? So when you're teaming up with those heroes, it's nice that if you have a higher hand size to use this card for that hero. But you know, obviously it would be tough for Hulk to play this card, right? All things would have to line up just right. Like you do, you have to have a double in your hand and dump everything else to play this card, which is rough, right? That's a really rough thing to do. But in general, I think most decks make sense with Avengers Mansion. Card Troll is so useful. Now, I will say, this is one of those cards that I tend not to use past like the halfway point of the game. Like if I'm on the final stage of whatever villain I'm playing, I'm probably not playing this card. If I'm almost on the final stage, I'm probably not playing this card because I don't think I can usually get enough out of it. Now, obviously, if I have a crazy hand, it's just like all resources in this card, of course I'm going to play it. But generally speaking, this is a card I like to try to get out earlier rather than later. So, yeah, Avengers Mansion I think makes sense as a expensive card and it makes sense in most decks. So we have Colossus. I'll show you the image of it right here. So this is the Colossus 4-cost ally, 1 thwart, 3 attack with 2 consequential, 3 life. Reduce the cost to play Colossus by 1. If your identity has the mutant or X-Men trait, comes in with tough. Coming in with tough makes it worth it in my opinion. Now it's nice that you don't have to be mutant or X-Men, but it does make the card cheaper at 3 costs. This is a no-brainer card for me. At 4 costs, probably not, right? And we'll get into why later. I think there's another card that might make a little more sense at 4 costs. But since this would get dropped down to a 3-cost card, I think it makes a lot of sense in X-Men decks. It is one of those weird things too, where you could use it as a blocker, right? With the tough. Or if you don't want to take the 2 consequential and want to be able to do like 2 rounds of attacks with Colossus and then use them as a blocker, you can use the attack. The consequential hits off the tough, right? It's one of those weird things that kind of like make sense both ways. Most of the time, if an ally comes in with tough, you don't want to attack at all. But a 3 attack is pretty good for an ally. Again, especially coming at 3 costs. At 4 costs, I think it's a little high. I don't see this card really ever being used outside of an X-Men deck, which most people probably wouldn't, but still, probably wouldn't. All right, let's talk about Doom Dugan. This to me is one of the first cards I'll talk about that I think is super situational and doesn't make sense in the vast majority of decks. And it's a 5-cost ally, 3 thwart with 3 consequential damage, and 3 attack with 2 consequential damage, 5 life. Now, it's an interrupt when you would use one of his basic powers, exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control. For each card exhaust this way, Dugan gets +1 to that power. So you could thwart or attack up to 6. Now, if you are running a shield-specific deck, yeah, I think it makes sense, right? A shield-specific deck, you have a ton of stuff already out there. He's more of a late card at that point. He's someone I wouldn't put out early game. I think you do kind of need to get him at least swinging/thwarting 5, right? At 4 but at 5 and 6, I think is the sweet spot with him. And generally speaking, you have to be somewhat built out for this. So it's one of those cards I think is hyper situational. It's a good card at 5 costs, or it can be a good card, is what I should say. But in the vast majority of your decks, you're probably never going to play this card, I would guess. But it's fine for shield decks, and especially if you gear it toward that, right? If you gear it toward that. So, yes, hyper situational. This card makes sense, but overall, probably not in the vast majority of my games. Kind of going along with that is Heimdall. Heimdall. 5-cost ally, 2 thwart, 3 attack. The 3 attack has 2 consequential damage. After Heimdall enters play, look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, discard one of them, and put the others back in any order. It's 4 costs. Up until the point with Asgard cards, I never used Heimdall, right? It was never really worth it to me to use them. The 5 cost was just too much. I couldn't swing 2 times and then use them as a blocker, which was kind of weak in my opinion. With the 2 thwarting, it's a little bit better, like 3 attack 1 round, 2 thwarting, and then a blocker. It's not too bad. The discarding and putting things back in order like can be helpful, but I feel like we've seen so many cards now, even with Blindfold, for example, from X-Men. Yes, you can't rearrange the cards that you want them to be in, but you can still discard a bad card in the top 5, and you know what the order is going to be, right? If you know what it's going to be, it's not so bad. So I think, and for those who don't know, Blindfold is the new X-Men Justice card. We can get that up there in a second, but it's one of those things where I don't think like cards like Blindfold makes sense to me. Obviously, it's X-Men specific, but Heimdall just doesn't. And I know there's like more support for Asgard cards out there now. I still don't think it makes 100% sense, even with the Asgard cards. Like, Thor can't really get great use out of Heimdall because he's just too expensive. Valkyrie, it's a little expensive for Valk, right? It doesn't 100% make sense. So it's a card that you would try to just put in any normal deck. I've never really used it. I haven't seen the value. And this is one of the cards that is a perfect example of. Comment below. Let me know if there's a fun, good way you figured out how to use this card, because I just haven't. All right, next up we have Lockjaw, 4-cost ally, 2 Thor with consequential damage, 2 attack with 2 consequential, 4 life, and you can play him from your discard pile. This is the biggest thing. I don't think I've ever played Lockjaw from my hand. I always use him as a resource and then play him from my discard pile. I like Lockjaw for that. I don't like that I can only basically attack or thwart, and that's it. But there are times when I end up with really bad hands of just like resource cards or like dead cards, and it's nice to be able to throw those away for this card. To me, that's the biggest benefit of this card, is that even a dead hand can kind of be salvaged a little bit by Lockjaw. Lockjaw isn't the best ally. If without the ability to play him from the discard pile, I think it's a terrible card. The fact that it can save a dead hand or just a high resource hand or whatever, right? Because of that, I think it makes a lot more sense, right? I think it makes a lot more sense. So this is a card I used a lot for a while, and I kind of like died out a little bit because it does take up 1 card slot. But when I need to fill something out maybe a little bit more, or I'm using Power in All of Us, again, the double resource for basic cards, it makes a bit more sense. So I like Lockjaw. He doesn't go in every single deck, but I probably, if I wanted to, I could find a decent spot for him in pretty much all decks. All right, next up is Nick Fury from the core set. 4-cost, 2 thwart, 2 attack ally with 3 life. After Nick Fury enters play, choose 1. Remove 2 threat from a scheme, draw 3 cards, or deal 4 damage to enemy. At the end of the round, if Nick Fury is still in play, you discard him. So basically Gandalf, right? Nick Fury is good. The fact that you can draw 3 cards after paying 4 is huge, right? It's a lot of card draw to kind of get you back to where you were. Not 100%, obviously, but get you close back to where you were. He's obviously good. 2 attack, 2 thwarts, pretty good. And being able to use him as a guaranteed blocker is great, right? Nick Fury's good. He should probably be in the vast majority of decks. I think he generally is. Now, it's not obviously guaranteed or anything, but I like Nick Fury a lot. I tried playing without him for a while just to see how I would do, and it's still fine, but he makes sense in, I think, most decks. And again, it's one of those things that if you should be able to find a spot for him pretty easily, unless you have a hyper specific deck you're kind of going for where he doesn't fit, then it makes sense. But generally speaking, I think Nick Fury falls into most decks just fine. All right, Scarlet Spider, Kane. So here we go. This is the image of it. This is the wording. We'll go back to the wording in a second. So it's a 4-cost ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack, Web Warrior card, 4 life. You can only play it if you have a Web Warrior card, or if you control a Web Warrior card, sorry. When you would reveal an encounter card and name a card type, then look at the card. If that card is the named type, deal 1 damage to Scarlet Spider and draw a card, right? It helps with card draw. So if you can get 3 card draw out of this, if you get it right, it's not bad. And with doing the 2 attack, 1 thwart, it's like, okay. I don't know. Now, if you have guaranteed, like, what the card, if you know what the next card is going to be for sure, then I think, yeah, okay, it's more worth it. Like, it's not so bad. Or, what am I thinking for the gauntlet, right? Like, what kind of card it's going to be. So that's fine. He makes more sense. But even then, it's just, you're just drawing an extra card, like, delayed, basically, right? Like, you're paying 4 up front to eventually draw cards cheaper. Now, if you can get Scarlet Spider out cheaper than 4, right? There's different ways with Helicarrier and different cards and Spider cards or Web Warrior cards to lower his cost. Okay, it makes more sense. But I don't know. I've just never really found a really great use for him for trading off basically 4 costs now to draw more cards later on, right? Like I'm kind of killing a turn to hopefully help out 3 to 4 future turns, right? It's kind of a weird card. I could see it be really used, but in the vast majority of my Web Warrior plays, I don't think I've ever really used Scarlet Spider. Because because I don't like giving up on a turn completely that much. Maybe in the very beginning, again, if I had like a lot of resources, it would make sense, but that's so hyper specific that it'd be tough for me to do this. So Scarlet Spider is definitely a card I don't think it's really worth it or a card I use much. So All right, Snow Guard is our next one. 4 cost ally, 0 thwart, 0 attack, 3 health. So after Snow Guard enters play, place up to 3 shift counters here. While the shift counter here are equal to X, she gets. So if there's 1, it's a 3 attack and her attacks gain overkill. If it's a 2 shift counter, she gets 3 thwart and gains aerial. And if it's 3, she gains 5 hit points and gains retaliate. I've almost always used her with a 3, like to use her as a huge blocker and the retaliate. I don't know about anyone else, but to me, that makes the most sense. I like that the most. The aerial trait on allies isn't bad. It can be good if you're kind of really going for an aerial deck. But 3 thwart, I mean, it's good, but it's not amazing to me. The 3 attack with overkill is not bad against weaker minions. That's pretty decent. But to me, to use her as a blocker and then gain retaliate is huge, especially against, again, weaker minions or even against the villain itself. I can get 2 blocks out of it and retaliate. Okay. Like I'm generally pretty good with that. So Snow Guard, my champions decks almost always get Snow Guard when I'm playing champions. Outside of champions, it's if I feel like I need a big blocker, right? If I'm playing a protection deck, it probably doesn't really happen. So is this card kind of worth it? A bit. Yeah. And again, more situational. It's not one that I think goes into every single deck. But I think it's a good card. Like I think it's a fine card for what it is. Yeah, I just don't use that side champions decks that often, right? There's other more expensive cards I'd rather use. So anyway, Snow Guard's not bad. I don't know. I don't think it's great though. All right, next up is Storm. 5 cost ally, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 life. Reduce it by 1 if you're a mutant X-Men, which I think is needed. At 5 cost, Storm is not worth it, in my opinion, but we'll get into that in a second. Interrupt when Storm thwarts a scheme, move 2 threat from that scheme to another. So you can get rid of 4 off of one scheme, but you would have put 2 onto the other, right? If you thwarted it, or when you thwart it. So it removes 4 from one, but it puts 2 of that threat onto another one. I like the idea, right? Like I like the trade-off. I like the idea. But at 5 costs, it's huge. No way. That just doesn't make sense. At 4 costs, I have a hard time playing Storm. I really do. I like the mechanic of what they're trying to do here. That like, okay, you really need to get rid of this side scheme, so here's a way to do it. But it's not like an overall helps you completely thing. So I'm a little, I don't know about Storm. I think she's a bit too expensive for what she is, personally. I don't know. I use her for now because I want more X-Men allies in my deck, and 4 isn't too bad. I think as more X-Men cards come out, Storm's just not going to be used. Unless it's like really side scheme heavy villains where they at least put 4 threat on the scheme, right? That's it. Or if I'm playing multiplayer, I guess, too. That would be the other thing, because there's usually more threat in the side scheme. So, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Storm. I don't think she's worth it at that cost, but it's not terrible, I guess. So, all right, this is the big one for a lot of people. It's Symbiote suit. Sorry. It's a 4 cost upgrade, max 1 per deck. Your identity gets +1 to each of its basic powers, +1 hand size, and 10 hit points. But you have to draw an extra bad card each round. Get Up in Game did a really good overview on this card, so I won't hash that too much. But I think he did an excellent job with it. I think in a multiplayer, this card makes a lot of sense, right? To divvy up that bad card between 4 people each round, or for 4 rounds. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if you have a hero that is swinging for a lot, right? Swinging for a lot. You probably don't want 2 people to have it, but 1 makes sense, sure. Again, I think it can be really good for that. I think for solo, it's not great. Honestly, I haven't found a way to really make this work solo. I've toyed around with it, but with most tough encounters where I would want the extra +1 to basic, the +1 hand size, and the 10 hit points, I don't want more bad cards, right? Ronin, I want to mitigate as many bad cards as humanly possible. So the idea of getting more of them sounds terrible. Same with Venom Goblin, right? Same with Loki. Getting more bad cards is surely going to lead to my demise in the game. So I don't see the offset really happening there. Now, if you're playing a quote unquote normal hero or a normal villain, like a Taskmaster and Expert, this could make more sense, right? Taskmaster and Expert, where I could possibly get the capture card to get the other allies in or whatever. Yeah, okay, this makes more sense to me. This is fine. Absorbing Man, yeah, sure, this is fine. But I don't think it's like this super overpowered card or anything like that. It for me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's one I rarely include in my decks, if ever. So this one, on the other hand, I really like. I really like Venom. And it's a weird card, and it's very not situational. But let me explain. It's a 4-cost ally, 2 thwart, 3 attacks, 6 life. After you reveal an encounter card, deal 1 damage to Venom. Deal damage to an enemy equal to the number of icons in that card's boost area. You get an extra bad card. I think it was Disguise Gaming that mentioned this card in one of his streams that said he looks at Venom at Eddie Brock as like the closer of the game, right? You're getting to the very end. You put in Eddie Brock. And I started playing with Venom this way. And I think it's 100% true, right? Because if you know that you're getting near the end of a game, and even on solo, and you can use Venom, let's say one round for the villain. That's it. You could put Venom in, do the 3 damage. Cool. If you reveal an encounter card and you deal 1 damage to Venom and you do 2-3 damage with the revealed encounter card, right? We're up to 5 damage already with two on Venom. So 5 damage already. Next round, you do 3 more attack with Venom. That's 8. So essentially from one villain's phase, you did 8 damage with just Venom. That's kind of nuts. And that's assuming you're only revealing 1 encounter card, right? You only revealed 1. If you can reveal more or more revealed or whatever, then you could do even more damage. So I think that's kind of the huge thing with Venom, right? And most of the time you probably would reveal more than 1. But regardless, it doesn't matter. Especially with that he gives you an extra bad card, right? So the fact that he gives you an extra bad card, you would reveal more naturally. With that being said, what I'm really saying here is against villains with a lot of boost icons in the bottom, and at the very end of the game, at the bare minimum, if there's only 1 revealed card, you should be able to do 8 damage with Venom for a 4 cost. Now, that's not bad, right? That's not bad because that doesn't include like your attack cards in your hand. It doesn't include your powers or anything like that. It doesn't exhaust Venom to do it. So obviously when you reveal a second encounter card, right, it's even better, right? There's so much. I know I'm using 8 as the bare minimum. It's really 6 as the bare minimum, or like 7. But like most of the time when you're getting near the end of the deck, it's two boost icons, right? Generally speaking. I know I'm doing very general things here right now. But it's just to prove a point, or just to make a point. Again, at this point too, when you're playing Venom, you're mostly already built out as well. So you're not playing generally speaking, the full upfront cost of Venom. You probably have a helicarrier or Avengers Mansion or other things, or maybe resource generators to help pay for Venom. And then this way, this card isn't that expensive or as expensive, right? And you're probably cycling through your deck more, so it's easier to get to him faster, especially at the end of the game. Anyway, long story short, I don't put him in all my decks, but I think he makes a lot of sense if you go in with the thought process of, I am going to allow the villain to take 1 more round and that's it. And we have to win by then. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think he's really good and really strong with that in mind. If you're playing him early on, I think you're doing it wrong and it just doesn't work well. So, all right, last one. This is it. War Machine, right? From Rise of Red Skull box. 4 cost ally, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 life. Comes in with toughness and his attacks gain range, right? So he doesn't get retaliated. I want to like War Machine more. I just can't get War Machine to work the way I want. I don't know what it is. I like the idea of coming in with tough. I think that's pretty decent. The 2/2/3 stat line is fine. It's just not something I love. And a lot of villains now, especially, are coming in with piercing or have things that give them piercing. It seems like everything has piercing now. And it just knocks out War Machine. Or they do some really weak damage before the card and just kind of like pings off my tough. I don't know. I want to like War Machine more. I think War Machine's a good card overall. But it's just one that just doesn't end up in my deck that much. And gaining range isn't bad, but there's only a handful of villains that really do retaliate. Like consistently. Zola's the only one, right? But the other ones that get it later on, like you're trying to get off the retaliate anyway. So it's not like this huge benefit to have retaliate. Like it's nice in that moment, but in general, you're probably want to get the retaliate off anyway. So it's not a make or break thing on War Machine. The nicest part is you get basically a free block with War Machine with tough, right? That's the nicest part. But for a 4 cost, I don't know. It seems like a lot, and all these other cards that we mentioned, I think are just better, right? I'd rather have those cards in my deck than War Machine. So I don't think it's terrible, but I don't know. 4 cost seems like a lot for him, and just something I don't know. I just don't use him that much. I don't know. So, all right. So once again, that's just me going over kind of where I think is worth it or not worth it or whatever with the basic cards. Like I said, this is not a one-way discussion. Do me a huge favor, scroll down, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to join the channel and help me out. Look at the join button and check out the different membership options to get different perks for this channel, a lot of fun stuff. But let me know that in the comments what you think of these basic cards. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And yeah, if you really like this stuff, let me know and we can do it in different aspects if you're interested. I don't know if this is not an interesting topic, then we don't have to do it either. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down there, and I'll see you all next time.